all our pretty cities are pretty much broken, so to say, right? Your daily life is such a pain, right? We need to understand why these issues exist. What are the root causes? How do we fix them? Where do we get started? So that is the starting point, and we have to start like really, it's high time actually. We should have done this like years ago, but please now kind of bring the attention back on these issues and really look at things in a holistic way. So if you want cities which are sustainable and livable, we need to come together to make it happen. And yeah, this is something that everybody has a right to a dignified life in a city.
Hi, welcome to the Mohua show. My name is Mohua Chinappa and I am an author, entrepreneur and ex-housewife. This podcast is about everything from business to technology to arts to lifestyle, but done and spoken ईमानदारी से.
Hi, in today's episode, we are very honored to have with us Meera K, the managing trustee of Oorvani Foundation and the founder of Citizen Matters. So Meera's commitment to community media, urban issues, and local governance is inspiring, and her work reflects a deep understanding of the dynamics that shape our cities. So join us today as we explore her journey, insights, and vision for fostering positive change in urban environment. Welcome, Meera, in today's podcast. And the first question that we put together for you was this, because you're just going through your entire bio is so impressive. And obviously, you're extremely passionate, which we are going to get down to and figure out more about you as the podcast progresses. But just can you share with us the inspiration behind founding Citizen Matters and your journey towards becoming a leading voice in the community, media, and urban governance? What made you get into the space?
Hi, Mahua. Thank you for inviting me. It's lovely to be here. Uh, so, just reflecting back on the journey and why we started Citizen Matters and where we are now, I think it's clear to everybody who lives in cities that all our pretty cities are pretty much broken, so to say, right? Your daily life is such a pain, right? Whether it is traffic or garbage or the lack of water supply, dependable water supply, or it's the air we breathe. It's pretty much such a pain being living in our cities, right? For most of us, for almost everybody, especially the bigger ones. So they're broken, and these are things we need to fix because you need a good environment, a natural environment. You need to ensure health and well-being of all our people. We need social and economic support. Uh, that's pretty much the expectation for every citizen. But how do our cities provide them or not? Right? That is a question. And one of the reason for these issues is the challenge in the local governance space, right? Local government is the one which is closest to these issues, and they're better placed to solve these issues. But unfortunately, in all our cities, it's pretty much the state or other agencies which are controlling, what's happening in our communities, in our neighborhoods. Our cities have complex problems and they need collective effort to solve them, right? And how do you bring people together? One, you need to have the sense of community. You need a shared vision of what our cities uh, future should be, what kind of neighborhoods we want to live in. And for this, the starting point is information and awareness. Right? We need to understand why these issues exist. What are the root causes? How do we fix them? Where do we get started? So that is the starting point, and we felt like uh, as people living in Bangalore in 15 years ago, when my co-founder and I started it, we felt like we didn't have enough understanding of all the issues. And that time, Bangalore was growing. It was about, I think, 6 million in 2007. And now, of course, we are 12, 13, whatever million. So many projects were underway. If you remember, whether it was a Damlu flyover or the Silpur flyover, they took years, and it was a city in progress. So as lay people, most people didn't have a sense of why things were so crazy. Why were all these projects taking so long? why was it broken, right? Who was responsible for it? What are the budgets allocated? And we felt like we need to have a better understanding, and there was lack of information and awareness about what's going on in our city. We said that is a starting point. So, so one is this, creating the sense of community and to have this information and awareness. And the best way to do it was through having a local media, right? Local journalism can fill this gap and bring it all together. And over time, we realized it's to add to these two things. The third part is this belief system that change can happen, that we can all actually look forward to have this, not just a positive mindset, but actually have conviction that things can be better. You have to look at examples of, projects which have been successful. Like if a neighborhood has managed to solve its garbage problem, then you get inspired and say, okay, this can happen in my community as well. So a combination of this sense of community, sense of ownership, add to that information and awareness, and then this belief system that things can be better, things can change, is what actually, brings people together and actually start, improving things. So that's sort of why we use journalism and media as a way to sort of work towards better cities.
Also, it's a great way to reach more people.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
yes, it's a great way to reach more people. So it seems like a really mammoth task, because obviously any city growing, you will have so many issues at so many different layers, and many people are not sensitized, because everybody, I think, would like to believe that whatever that they have within their own space, that only matters. So you've also emphasized the importance of in-depth local journalism, and community commitment in being a catalyst, to create better cities, which I think everybody is today crying for. And so, how do you see these elements intersecting, and what impact, do they have on civic change? That would be wonderful to know from you.
See, as a civic media platform, one of the key things that Citizen Matters does is talk about issues in an in-depth way. We're not into breaking news, right? So we actually dive deep into issues and explain why things are broken, right? Adding that perspective, connecting the dots, so to say, right? But your daily media, daily newspapers provide the information on what is happening, like who said what projects are announced, but it's very hard to connect the dots unless you take a step back, saying you can ask questions like, okay, you announce a new project which can solve traffic problem in this area, and what happened to the project that you announced last year, or what happened, you said the earlier flyover would actually solve the problem, it hasn't done that. How much was spent on it? Why are we, planning this way? Where is the master plan for, to solve all these problems together in a holistic way? To ask those kind of questions, you need to take a step back and really understand what is going on. And so that is something that you need, a journalist to come and look at. The second part is that also, even your basic, public services, getting things done, like I mentioned, right? Those are things that unfortunately we don't have enough information of, right? From something like how do you get your driver's license, right? Only when you go there, you find out that, okay, you've gone, taken the form, filled it up, and then they say, oh, you need it in triplicate, or you need this affidavit from someone, or you need a doctor certificate. A lot of it is not really clear. So now, of course, things are getting better because you're moving online, but still, when you go there, you find a lot of things. So that understanding and of public services is something we realized was very critical. So we started doing a lot of explainers as well. So we were doing in-depth articles on explaining issues, adding perspective. We looked at explainers on from a public services as well as for issues as well. And then we also started doing citizen journalism, right? That is citizens sharing stories of what is happening in their own neighborhood. They writing about things that they know in public life. Some of them are quite knowledgeable about issues. They may know because they're, let's say, part of some RWA, or they're volunteering for a neighborhood. Like, they know the issues much better, right? So to share that knowledge is pretty useful, so that their own community and others in the city get to know. And we encourage a lot citizens to actually come and share their knowledge in the form of articles. So that citizen journalism very important component of our work, and that complements what our own journalists do. And so this has been a very powerful way of bringing attention to many of these issues. And of course, there's now access to technology, and there is this understanding of issues much more right now. You can see these days, right? So that uh, and sharing their stories is also kind of in a way empowering for them, because they've helped raise awareness and for the larger community. So overall, that going through this process of asking the right question, learning what is going on so that they can articulate it in their story, and then sharing it with a larger public is a very empowering act. So the citizen journalism part that we do along with the local other the professional journalists bringing in, plus we also have a lot of experts uh, talking about and sharing their knowledge as well. Together, it's has been very, very powerful and had an impact on the ground.
How phenomenal is that? My God, I mean, um, hats off to you to be able to, bring together people to talk about things that matter. Because I think most of us would like to believe that somebody else would do it for us. So it's fantastic. So looking at your own journey, you've transitioned from the IT sector to community improvement initiatives. It's a huge shift. Most IT people would, I would assume, be only interested in that, that little world that they belong to. And so, I mean, it's phenomenal. So, do you think also your previous experience influenced your current work, particularly in areas of product development and project management? Obviously, because having been in the IT sector for so long, all of those things you would have, utilized in your current profile. If so, please share with us, because there would be so many listeners who would want to do something small. So they would love to know from your end as to what is it that you did, to create something as successful as Citizen Matters.
Well, I think the first thing is I popularize a lot of tech jargon in with my team, so they get pretty like stumped when I talk about like open source or ping me and things like that. But seriously speaking, I think there are two ways where it has been very useful. One is as an organization level, set up, ensuring processes are in place, and then we have a very open, non-hierarchical approach, startup kind of approach in the organization as well. And we're very particular about putting policies in place, ensuring documentation, so that whatever work we do at a project level or even at a story level, it can be replicated anytime. So that's been a very useful thing. And also from a journalistic perspective, I think it kind of brings in a structured thinking, and you kind of focus on evidence and data, and that's been a useful, skill that one has developed as well. But honestly, one thing that I've realized is that something that no other sector teaches you. It's about human behavior, how people, react in the public sphere. Real life has been, I think, and working in the civic space has been huge learning experience in the last 15 years. How change happens, what makes the difference on the ground, what are the challenges, especially on the governance side or on, at the grassroots level. Great learning, yes.
So, Meera, I'm sure there would have been resistance sometimes, right, from people that you go out and interact. So, would you like to share with us any, incident that you remember that felt very, intimidating for you, probably? And how did you go around managing it? Something that I think if somebody wants to embark on this role, what should they do to learn how to go ahead and interact with people at the grassroots level?
I think very in the very early days when I and some of us started interacting with officials or elected representatives, it was a little hard because one, they had not heard of Citizen Matters. But I think one, we have used the kind of in-depth storytelling approach and a lot of data that we focus on, that has kind of helped build credibility as well. And now when we have those conversations, our understanding of issues is much more deeper, broader, and that's been very useful to kind of engage as well, right? We are able to bring the big picture as well as go in depth into specific issues on what is going on, and we have a historical understanding of the historical context of some of these issues as well. Uh, who is, which are the different groups working on these issues, who have managed to, you know, implement successful initiatives which have made a difference, what has worked, what has not, which are the schemes that are working, which are the, projects that have been where outcomes are worth emulating, what are those case studies. So that sort of has been a very useful learning, and I think now we're in a much better position when we are going and engaging. We have that, that context and understanding which is uh, holding us in good stead. Yeah.
So, your interest obviously ranges, from lake rejuvenation, solid waste management, and it's a diverse range of interests. So, tell us a little bit about your involvement in these projects. Maybe let's just talk about lake rejuvenation, especially now that Bangalore is really struggling with water and, water everywhere, but not a drop to drink. So, tell us a little bit about this.
Yeah, I have volunteered when my local lake in my neighborhood was getting rejuvenated. It was one of the earliest one many years ago that the BBMP chose to as part of their rejuvenation projects, right? In 2011 or so, right? A lot of people were started paying attention to what is going on in their neighborhood. There was a lot of encroachment. There was sewage coming in into the lakes and so on. And people started saying, okay, this seems to be a lake. Why is it so bad? And they, started complaining to local officials and all. And meanwhile, the government also, allocated some budget to revive some of those lakes. So that was a great example of how, community volunteers and a good decision by the government started like complementing each other, and things started moving afterwards. So I used to volunteer that time. Great, again, experience in learning on how things work, and something as simple as, in a city of whatever 800 square kilometers, you have this one little lake, and how complex things can be to fix a problem, a local problem, is something I learned, right from, issues like how do you plan a lake, where does the sewage coming in, you need to build diversion channels, you need to, who will take care of and ensuring security at the lake, where does the funding come from, etc., right? So that was a very good example in this entire process itself. And also, how do you bring the community together and take ownership of this? How do they start engaging with officials? You need, how supportive are officials, and, they get transferred after some time, and then what happens? So I think that was that experience also told me that success is never 100%, right? It's not like you think you've solved a problem and something new will come up. So the civic or the urban space is like that. So we are constantly trying to, figure out ways to mitigate or resolve all of these issues. And one of the reasons is these are all, some of the things that we do in our cities are very tactical. Right? You try to stop sewage at a lake and try to put a diversion channel, but the concept of like preventing sewage coming out itself needs to be fixed, right? Those are long-term solutions, and for lasting change, we really need to look at systemic issues and systemic solutions. So otherwise, we're going to kind of continue, battling these on a day-to-day basis, right? You fix one and something new will come up, right? Unless you get fix, for example, roads continue to have potholes. Unless you figure out how the whole contracting system happens and what is the quality control checks that are always going to be in place, it's not going to, improve too much.
Yes, exactly. I still remember, on my way towards Sarjapur and going towards Whitefield, there was a phase when you had this white foam that was just covering the entire road, and, a lake that had like filled up with so much of sewage that was so toxic. And it was frightening because, we just realized that, my God, what will the future look like if somebody doesn't take accountability? It seems very, very daunting, Meera, what you do, but I need to understand a little bit about the initiatives. How does it contribute to your work and the approach to change? Please do enlighten us on that.
When COVID happened, and we saw a lot of people volunteering and coming together to actually, help, especially like whether it's migrant workers or people who are stuck or people who are sick, right? And at that time, I felt a little hopeful. I thought it was a good opportunity to fix many of the things which are broken. We realized healthcare was an issue. We realized like where people were living without, proper housing was an issue. Those were things we needed to be fixing. And I thought that was a good opportunity to have actually started looking at those issues. But now when you see it, after the pandemic has passed, now we kind of almost back to square one. We're kind of going back to the way we do things, business as usual. Um, that was one thing. But right now, especially, thanks to there's a lot of political noise, there's a lot of distraction from real issues on the ground, right? That there's a flux in public sphere. And this sort of, there's a lack of trust in institutions and there's lack of, awareness and this polarization. All of it, in a way, is kind of taken the attention away from the real issues on the ground. So for all the work that, for example, that happened in waste management, right? There was plastic ban, there was great segregation, things were getting, people started composting in house, etc. Now, after after COVID, we kind of have reduce that. I mean, the work is kind of degenerated in some way, right? So it's important. So these are things you can't just like leave it. You can't, once things happen, you can't assume they will continue in a sustainable way. So we have to be eternally like vigilant in a way, right? Um, but also the other thing is now we have new challenges, right? One, there is a lot of socioeconomic pressure, and then of course there's climate change. It's going to affect all of us, yeah, young, the old, rich or poor, wherever you are, we are all going to have to deal with water scarcity or the poor air quality or heat stress. And what are we doing to really fix this? We can't just continue in the same way. And unfortunately, that's what is currently happening. So it's important to again kind of bring back the energy and in a way, the clarity that we had a little earlier and refocus and saying, okay, here are the problems, here's where we are. There is much more, these are much more urgent to solve. And what are we going to do now, right? So it's important that people, especially young people, are at the center of things, whether it is through civic groups or what committees or RWAs or trade associations, whatever way, people have to come together and kind of lead change. And in this, yes, civic media has a huge responsibility because we have to relentlessly keep the focus on the important stuff. And tech, of course, is also pretty useful and you enable the information sharing, you enable the understanding in a coherent way, not like, the rant that we see on social media, but to really say, here is the information, here are the ways you think through issues and learn. It can enable transparency and accountability as well. Together, yes, all of this is, our work is kind of helping in some way, but it's important to have like a shared vision to, and work together. So I'm hoping to see a lot of collaboration, experimental initiatives, and pushing the needle of what's working as well. So our goal is to see more problem solvers. End of the day, there's just like a lot of issues in our cities, and when more people come together, more people get into problem solving, taking very actionable steps, then things can change, right? So that's where our work is feeding into, and I hope to continue that.
Yeah, it's about being accountable actually for the entire environment that you're in. And yes, absolutely. So looking ahead, how do you envision, for the future of civic engagement in cities? And what role do you see community media and civic tech playing, in shaping that future? So I think, just tell us a little bit about your vision ahead.
Yeah, like I said, civic media is central to creating the right narrative, right? Keeping the attention on the really critical stuff. So more and more we have to talk about sustainable cities, livable cities, where everybody has a dignified life, regardless of what background you're from, and whether it is about public services, public transportation, or waste management. All of that needs to be kind of get enough attention, not just the typical politics that we see in the media, right? So that is where civic media comes in. And it's and the reason I'm saying is more and more we have to understand that or sustainability is an environment, and good environment is the core of well-being, right? It's just very difficult. The way we are structured now in our cities is going to be harder and harder to deal with as we go along, right? For example, something like accessible green space is very critical to well-being and mental health. And we understand all of these issues much better now. So
Yes.
we have to start like really, it's high time actually. We should have done this like years ago, but please now kind of bring the attention back on these issues and really look at things in a holistic way. Of course, you need economic opportunities, you need job growth, but you also need to look at, yes, there are challenges across the country that there are more people coming into cities as well, and how are we going to deal with these? So this sort of cities have to be thoughtfully designed to be sustainable, to right from planning to execution. And unless all of us are involved in having a say and ensuring that we have a voice in the kind of future we want, it's going to be hard, which is where this civic involvement and engagement is very critical to ensure that this voice is the citizen voice is centered in the public sphere.
So, Meera, I think the last question that comes to me is this, that we need to hear from you. What makes a city sustainable and livable? Obviously, we need water, we need clean air, and we need space. But what I'd love to hear from you, what makes a city sustainable? Because we see every day an influx of people coming into bigger cities in search for a better livelihood. How does one deal with all of this?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's all the typical things, right from commute to waste management or water, sustainable water. I mean, look at the way Bangalore's having challenges right now. When we've been talking about this for years, it's nothing new. Last year the rains were bad, and therefore it was inevitable that we have this scarcity. But over the years, we still haven't managed to ensure that something like rainwater harvesting is implemented by everybody. Right? We've been talking about it for so long, and we still have only a small percentage of buildings which have implemented that. Reusing treated water. So many of the STPs are dysfunctional, especially the public STPs. So it's really the problems are not new. The solutions are also known. And it's just we haven't managed to get our act together because one, of course, like I mentioned, this whole distraction in the political sphere, but also it's a lot to do with the planning and having this vision of the city, right? And like I said, underpinning all this is a very strong community engagement and civic participation. So if you want cities which are sustainable and livable, we need to come together to make it happen. And yeah, that's, this is something that everybody has a right to a dignified life in a city.
Absolutely. So, because a city is not just concrete, it is about human beings living in a city. It's about, how they thrive in a city. Because most
Yeah,
people come in with the hope of thriving when they come in to build a new life. Thank you so much for being on today's podcast. And it has been such an honor to have you, Meera. And
thank you.
look forward, to meeting up with you. We both are based out of Bangalore, and if there's any work that
Absolutely.
the Mohua Show can do with you in collaboration, we'd be very, very proud. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
To you, our dearest listeners, you can find us on your favorite streaming services, Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcast, and of course on all other major streaming services. With loads of love, we are The Mohua Show, where we talk ईमानदारी से.